if I can make this work, how will it positively affect others? Because if it was just about me, I promise you I would have stopped a long time ago. It would have been too difficult. It would have been too many hurdles.
I love that. And I know you're truly an entrepreneur because you were giving me my own business idea 5 minutes ago. So many businesses are not eligible for venture capital. I believe the number is, 80%. In your work at Backstage Capital, what can a small business do to identify early on that they may be a fit for venture capital or may not be a fit for venture capital?
Early days of any company, you want to really look at your options. And also researching, talking to other founders who are further along than you are, who have taken venture capital, getting the real deal from them. The reason that not every company and most companies shouldn't take VC and venture capital is because there's so much that you sacrifice for it. There are things that you get out of it, and depending on what type of company that you want your company to become, it might be right for you, but there's so much that you lose. You lose autonomy, your vision for it could change, you could be ousted as the CEO. I think people don't talk about these types of things. It's a little scary, but it's meant to be, because it's a very important decision to make. And so early on, really it's about researching, learning, and then also deciding like why you want outside funding. Is it because you read somewhere that you're supposed to have it? Is it because you want a certain headline or a certain article written about you? Because you have to live with that after that 24-hour news cycle. You have to live with that decision. So a lot of times people come to me, and even though my job is to find investments, I will tell them, I don't think you're ready for it, or I don't think that you need it. And what I really say is, like, if you want to hold on to your ownership and you want to just have a really great quality of life, and you want to make maybe 6 figures, 7 figures, even more, but it can take longer, and you're okay with that, then I would say, let's find some other ways for you to keep your company going. And then if you say, look, I want to be, the next ... multi-billion-dollar company. I want to go public with this company one day. I have a lot of competition, and they're very much so funded. Those are a lot of ways that you can see, okay, maybe you need to start thinking about outside funding.
For small businesses who are not a fit for venture capital, and maybe we have some in the audience here today, what other resources and strategies can you recommend from your experience to help them be able to find that funding?
Think about bootstrapping. A lot of times people will tune out when I say that because they say, oh, that's so difficult, it's so hard. How am I supposed to get the money that I don't have? But there are some certain ways. So there's a hack that I think about a lot. And that's, if you have a service company, is there a product that you can build to complement that service company that you can sell alongside it that helps you with more income? Or if you have a product, is there a service that you can sell to complement that product? So I always ask people first, have you thought about that? Because you don't want to have too many distractions and go in different lanes, but this would be right down the center of your lane if there's something that you can do to complement that. So that's one way to bootstrap. Then there are things like there are loans, but a lot of people can't get loans. I know I can't, or most of my life I couldn't. Yeah. So today there are new ways of getting loans. Like if you are a customer of certain payment processing companies, they a lot of times will have their own lending service within that because they get to see every day what money comes in. And so a lot of times people will have the opportunity to get into stores or do things like that, but they don't have the capital for the inventory. So sometimes these payment processing companies will look at your last 90 days or your last year of sales, and they'll say, we'll give you a percentage of that. The more you can get yourself out of a desperate state, the better. I say sometimes have your job be your first investor, because if you just go out and you have no net and you go out there and you need quote unquote money, that's not any investor's problem. They're not going to look at it as, oh my gosh, let me get my clutch purse and write you a check. They're going to say, what was your plan when you started out? So if you're in a position now where you've not raised money from outside sources, you're actually in a really cool position because you get to look at your company from a different lens now and say, okay, what do I want the next couple of years to look like?
The thousands of pitches that you've seen, what works in a pitch based on your experience and what doesn't work in a pitch?
I like when you brag about your accomplishments. You got to let us know what you've done, but exaggerating and lying, those do not work. So sometimes people don't brag enough about what they've done, but at the same time, they'll lie about a certain metric, which is it's weird because I think they think this is what the person wants to hear. So I'm going to really embellish this side of it. I promise you, if you look at what you've already accomplished and you just find a way to articulate it very strongly and make sure people know about it, have it at the beginning of the pitch deck or have it at the beginning of your conversation, I promise you that will go a long way. You do not have to embellish things that you think the other person has won. Also, you're 6 months in and you have one SKU, one product, and you say, we're gonna be the next Amazon in 3 years. Because what it does is, it's great. It's like if your intention is to be Amazon in decades, awesome. That tells you have vision and you have this desire to go far. But if you say it something that doesn't seem very realistic, it makes people doubt your judgment. So, I go back to me saying I'm going to invest in 100 companies by 2020. When I was saying that in 2015, I could see how some people could see that, oh, that's not very realistic. But I think I had a lot of the stats to kind of back that. I think people come in and they want to put their best foot forward. They say things like, this is my only chance. If one person's no or yes is your only chance, there's a problem with your company.
That's a really good point, because how many no's did you get before Backstage? Do you even have a number on that?
I stopped counting it like 1,000. I still get no's today. I get no's all the time. But you have to get the no's. I say it's a math game. You have to get the no's. If you're not getting a lot of no's, it means you're not taking enough risk. You're being a little safe, right? And you have to take risk if you want to do something audacious. If you want to do something, imagine if I were timid and I said, well, I think I want to invest in a company, that I wouldn't get very far. So you're going to hear no's. Think about your favorite person, your favorite entrepreneur, your favorite entertainer. Did they say, oh, well, one night I was watching TV, there was a number that said, call here if you want to be a rock star. And I just called the number, and then the next day I was a rock star. Can you imagine? Have you ever heard that? No, you've heard, think about Beyonce and think about LeBron and think about Bill Gates and all the different people that you look up to or say that they've done great things. You don't hear the overnight success. It is a series of no's followed by one or two important yeses, followed by a series of no's, followed by, it's like a heartbeat. And as long as you can understand that math game, you become the player, not the one being played. Very recently announced that I have the second book. It's called Your First Million. Your First Million is like the blueprint. Because I think that for every 1 billionaire, there should be 1,000 millionaires, which is the same amount of money. The idea is with Your First Million, the book, that over the next few years, just like people have come to me and said that this book has been helpful, what I want to see over the next few years is Your First Million helped me make my first million.
I like that. And I like that you mentioned it's a blueprint, because I feel like maybe I'm behind the curve here and I need to be a millionaire already.
Well, I think, it's not just a vanity metric.
It's not.
Right? It's about having the same thing I mentioned before. It's about control. It's about a power, like a collective power. It's about influence. It's about having better water to drink and no potholes on the street, because if you have a certain amount of money, it doesn't have to be out of the stratosphere, but a certain amount of money, and you get together with other people who have a certain amount of money, you can then affect change and influence policy. And to me, I can see that through line. So I want to see more and more underrepresented, underestimated people having that same power, even if it needs to be collective. If you take nothing else away, learn to pitch to your customers. Learn to sell. If you can learn to sell, you don't have to worry about anybody else being involved if you can be a great seller.
The first question I have is from our in-studio audience.
From your experience, do you have a time when the venture firm or investor wasn't serving the founders or the startup community?
Oh, many. It's a very competitive place. And just like anywhere, you have to kind of guess and hope that you know what the intentions are from your investor. So that's another thing. You're auditioning the investor as much as they're auditioning you. You're allowed to do diligence on them, which means that you're allowed to reach out to founders who have been invested in by them to see what their experience was. You don't have to get anybody's permission to do that. And you're allowed to, take time to make your decision with that. So yes, sometimes it happens where the person is not really above board, or because of the way that venture capital is run, because so many people invested in the fund, sometimes the VCs just have to make a really tough decision, like getting rid of the CEO if they don't feel they're performing, et cetera. So there's a lot to consider before you're taking VC.
I've heard you speak about being your authentic self and owning not just your strengths, but being aware of your weaknesses, both real and perceived, and using them as an advantage. Can you speak to that or share an example?
One thing to do is always be looking at yourself and analyzing yourself, because sometimes we can take criticism pretty harshly, and we just kind of dismiss it. And sometimes we can find some gems in criticism. It's usually the way that it's delivered that's the problem. Usually it's you didn't ask for someone's opinion, or someone who's not taking the risks that you're taking, doing the things that you're doing, are offering up criticism at the wrong time when you're just in the middle of it. But what I like to do is just kind of take a personal look at some of the things that I might not be living up to. And I took the question as personal. I don't know if it was meant to be, but I took it as personal because I like to do that inner reflection, because it just makes me a better person, makes me a better friend and wife and leader and entrepreneur, to think about what I could have done better in a certain situation. And then sometimes I look at a situation and I say, you know what, I don't know if I could have done that any better, and recognizing that. So both of those, being able to self-reflect, it's a huge strength. So for me, for instance, I didn't go to college. I know a lot of people who are my peers went to college, and I don't think of it as a weakness, but you could think of it, some could think of it that way. And I think about, well, maybe I don't know certain things, like certain pieces of curriculum, but what I do know is that I'm really good at articulating and communicating with groups and being sort of the middle person to the people that know that information and translating it for them. So that's a huge thing that you could say is a weakness, and you turn it into this huge advantage, because not everybody can do that. So a lot of experts and a lot of people who have credentials are not great at articulating that to the masses. And I can do that in most cases. And that has brought me so much opportunity. And so many people get behind the momentum of what I'm working on, which helps other people. So if you think about it like that way, it really gets exciting.
My question is, how do you handle personal challenges in your own lives and prioritize self-care in times of high demand, change, or when you're facing difficult situations?
I just say I'm very honest with myself these days. The older I get, the more wisdom that, happens. And I just get really honest. And I'm really good at self-care now. I will say we're at Amazon. First thing you do is go on Amazon and get a pair of sweatpants that are one size too big. And you get in them. That's one of the things I do for self-care, is I just lounge around the house, and every once in a while I'll say, oh my goodness, I'm an adult. Oh, that's great. I can take a nap right now if I want to. That's great. Now, who's going to tell me not to? And I watch my favorite shows, and I try to make other people's urgency not my urgency, because like you said, if you're not good, you're not going to be good for anybody else.
Exactly.
Thank you for being here today with us. I was wondering, how do you find and make strategic partnerships that help your business grow?
I say be yourself so the people looking for you can find you. And that means a lot of things. It's a lot of personal, but it also means business. So I like to tell other founders, and I also do this for my own brand, which is let people know who I am and what I think and my opinions. And if you get some of that content out there, through creating a podcast or having a website or having blogs or even little clips on social, people will start to come towards you. I do this, and if you do that, maybe it will work well together. So I've had a lot of partnerships start that way. And it's almost like you're trying to get a spotlight on what you're trying to do. And that's another reason, a lot of people say, oh, I don't want to be on camera. I don't want to be the star of the show. It's part of your role as a CEO or as a founder of a company to do that, to bring attention to your brand. So I think that's a really great hack, and it can be fun. And the trick is, focus on the things you like. If you really just don't want to be on camera, focus on the 7 other things you could do that involve just your voice or involve presenting slides or whatever the case, right? There's a lot that you can get out of that.
So, in the last 3 years, we saw a lot of record-breaking valuations and funding for founders. But what advice do you have for those founders that maybe raised a really great round, but now are facing less than favorable revenues and returns? Would you ever advocate for them to pivot or to raise again?
I definitely wouldn't advocate for them to pivot just for the sake of appeasing investors or trying to figure out what the next trend might be that helps them raise the Series B or whatever, right? I would caution against that. So if you're already in it, I'm cautioning everybody not to get in it, but if you're already in it, and you had that windfall. There's a video clip of me from 2017 predicting that windfall, by the way, predicting it almost to the year. And I said, it's going to rain. Hold on to that rainwater because you're going to need it. It's going to go away as quickly as it got here. And I said that very specifically to underrepresented, underestimated founders. What I hope has happened with most founders who got that windfall is that they were able to hold on to it and kind of look at it. Even I with Runner, when we were raising, I was like, oh, this is great. You were raising. And it turned on a dime. Thankfully, with our pivot, like we did end up pivoting, but it wasn't just because of fundraising. It was because of many things that we saw kind of in the market and how people were reacting and how people were using our product already. But thankfully, we were able to in a very, very lean way. And it actually was like the best thing that could have happened to us. So yes, I recommend pivoting when it's right to. I also recommend a lot of times we fall in love with our ideas and our original vision. And we almost think of it as a failure if we can't go in that same path. But I promise you, 90+% of companies pivot at some point, at least once.
We only have like a minute left. Is there any last things you want to close with?
We have more control over our lives and our destinies and what happens next tomorrow, what happens in years from now, than we believe we do. We can't control it all. And there are things that happen out of nowhere sometimes that just rock us to our core. And we feel like we're alone in that sometimes. But what is super exciting to me, and even through all the ups and downs that I go through still, and I have, believe me, issues and problems, but even through that, what keeps me going is the understanding that I can control what happens next in a lot of ways that sometimes we forget. And a lot of that has to do with you taking inventory of why you're doing what you're doing. And this is for career professionals too. Why are you doing what you're doing? Is it because of outside voices that told you you're supposed to be there? Is it because you think you're playing somebody else's playbook? Somebody else did it, so I'm supposed to do it. Is it because of family? Is it that? Are you centered and understanding of your purpose, your why, what kind of fills you up? So like even that exercise alone can give you so much clarity and confidence that it inspires me when I feel lost.
Thank you, Arlan.